Goods not only threaten the economy but also people's lives. Earlier this month, we reported on 2 young children in Soweto, aged 4 and 6. They died, allegedly after eating snacks bought from a spaza shop in Naledi. Let's find out how exactly the Consumer Commission is making sure that communities are protected from harmful foods and how difficult a task it actually is, knowing how big the informal sector is. Let's bring in Prudence Moilwa, Head of Complaints and Investigations at the Commission. Prudence, good morning to you. I appreciate your time. I want to start here very briefly, if you could, but I don't want there to be any confusion. What do you mean when we talk about a counterfeit good? What makes it a counterfeit good in your definition?
Okay. I think loosely, when you look at it, it's a fake product. It's something that is passed on as something else, when as the real thing, when in fact it is a fake product. But I think it's very important to lay the foundation in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, which is the legislation that we give effect to as the National Consumer Commission. The mandate of the Commission is to make sure that consumers in the market have access to products that are safe and are of good quality. So using the language of the Consumer Protection Act, it doesn't necessarily refer to those goods as counterfeit products. It refers to them as unsafe products. So I needed to just clarify that. Counterfeit products, as I've already indicated, are just products just loosely defined as products that are fake or are passed on to be certain products when in fact they are not.
How bad is the problem in our country? The SAPS talking of 72 million rand at a recent raid. That's the amount of counterfeit goods that they confiscated, I imagine will be destroyed. To your understanding and that of the Commission, just how bad is the problem?
It is quite bad. I think as we pick it up, as we monitor the markets, we do pick up that there is actually a wide problem with regard to the unsafe products being sold in the markets. So our observation as the Commission, as we work together with the Department of Health and environmental health practitioners, we do pick up that a lot of products in the market have the potential of being unsafe because of the way that people and the markets or the shops do not follow the health protocols, as well as ensuring that they sell the goods that consumers expect in the markets.
How does a consumer know the difference? You could, as you say, it's easily identifiable loosely in your explanation, and I understand why, loosely defined as a knockoff. It's a fake version of it, even though it might look legitimate. How does a consumer who doesn't know any better actually pick up that it's counterfeit? What are the telltale signs?
Look, I think the first telltale signs can be if, for example, as a consumer, you are used to using the product and it looks a particular way. From the pictures that we've seen, the product is identifiable by way of looking different in the way of the packaging of the product, as well as the labeling of the product. So the consumers who usually use the product can actually pick it up by looking at the fact that they are a little bit different from what they are used to, or in terms of the packaging itself, it will look different from the original product.
If the police, if the SAPS are not able to get on top of all the spaza shop issues and the counterfeit goods, how does the National Consumer Commission plan to do that? What is your observations? What is your investigations into spaza shop? How many are you looking at?
You know, in the past, and I think on an ongoing basis, we partner with the Department of Health, which is food health, as well as the police to do sting operations, so that we then go through, because we leverage on each other's powers in terms of various legislations that we that we implement or that we enforce. In the past, we've worked very well with the Department of Agriculture in terms of food that is being imported into the country, certain types of food that are regulated by the Department of Agriculture, such as your meat and so on. And with regard to food health, we've worked very well together with the Department of Health, wherein we work with environmental health practitioners on the ground, also using our enforcement powers in order to make sure that when we do inspect, all of us implement in terms of various regulations that we implement.
So what you're telling me, Prudence, is the monitoring aspect of this is ideally done by the ministries involved, whether if it's a case of food, the Ministry of Health, and also the Ministry of Agriculture. Is that correct? How well do you work with them? How open are they to taking you along to these stings?
Yes. You know, whenever we put an operation together, sometimes they are put together by the net joint. We worked actually very well together because in terms of the health regulation, there are certain protocols that need to be followed before food is sold in the shops. And more often than not, what we pick up is that, you know, when those protocols are not followed, and also in illicit trade, people do not follow the protocols as set out by the Department of Agriculture as well as the Department of Health. So how well it has worked in the past, and I think the case that I can refer to is when we picked up during the cases of listeriosis or listeria. We were able to work together with the Department of Health, invoking the powers of the NICD in terms of the testing of the products, and us from our side invoking the powers of product recalls in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. So from our end, where we come in, especially in a regulated space, we work with those regulators to make sure that after we've identified the products and the tests have been run by the Department of Health or the Department of Agriculture, the National Consumer Commission then invokes its power to recall products from the market. So it's very important that we work together in that regard, especially because the area of food is well regulated. I think the only problem comes in when it comes to the implementation, and in the illicit trade, people intentionally flouting the rules in terms of following the health protocols in terms of the marketing of foods, stuffs and food products.
And that takes me to my last question, Prudence, as well. I suppose we do need to take a step back and just understand the economy that our country exists within. Yes, you have the informal economic sector, but the cost of food, the cost of living is so expensive now, and it's a simple supply and demand issue, isn't it? Those who want to buy a product don't have the money to buy it. Those who are selling it realize there's a market for those who don't have the money to buy the authentic, possibly healthy version of a product. So when you have a demand, you're going to have a supply. I suppose you could look at it from that perspective, and you're always going to have a situation where illegal operations are going to pop up because there's a market for it, isn't it?
Yes. Definitely. I think, as you correctly point out, the issue is the pricing. And also, I think the other part of our mandate as the Consumer Commission that we've worked on is just to make sure that the pricing of the goods in the market is also done in a fair way. So we have actually, with the current shortage of eggs, started a preliminary inquiry into the pricing of eggs in the country. And that is also helping in order just to check in that space whether or not the prices that are going up are indeed done in a reasonable way so that consumers can be able to afford the products in the market. And as you correctly point out, a lot of consumers would go to the illicit market because on the face of it, it looks like they are cheaper. So we urge business to actually make sure that they do not flout the rules also when it comes to the pricing of food, and make sure that the prices that they charge consumers in terms of the markups are within the range of being fair prices.